our proposal does not create a situation where state and local law enforcement in Connecticut become an arm of ICE to go out and round up people here that are here illegally who are committing no other crimes. That is not what we are proposing. However, we can serve to assist our federal partners in their scarce resources by getting the most dangerous people out of our communities. That is what our focus is, and the current Trust Act prevents that from happening. For example, the timing of this. Just 3 weeks ago, in a parole hearing, an individual sat before the parole board. Now, this is an individual who has prior convictions for sex-related offenses, has been on the sex offender registry, and in 2021 was convicted of sex assault of a minor again. He was given what I believe is an abysmal 5-year sentence. 3.5 years later, he's before the parole board, and he says, I'm not going to promise you I'm not going to do this again. I'll do my best to not drink and be around those situations, but I'm not going to promise you. And I watched that hearing. And the parole board members sat there and they worked together to make sure that they got this individual out who has a detainer for deportation, got him out to make sure he could avoid that deportation. Literally took steps to put a multi-time convicted sex offender back on our streets when the federal government wants to deport him to the country that he came from. To me, that should shock the conscience of every single person in the state of Connecticut. I have sons, I have nieces, I have nephews. Anybody who's been around me for a while knows the care and concern I have for children. And to see state employees or appointees doing what they can to keep somebody from being deported who is a multi-time sex offender is atrocious. If you look at the ICE website, even because a lot is talk about the new administration. So this comes from the ICE that was under former President Biden. Detainers are critical public safety tools because they focus enforcement resources on removable non-citizens who have been arrested for criminal activity. Our proposal is even more specific. Horrific fines. Detainers increase the safety of all parties involved because enforcement and removal personnel, law enforcement officials, and the non-citizens themselves, because they allow ICE, who are going to deport these individuals, to get them under a controlled environment instead of having to go out into our streets, and the possibility for the outcomes of that are detrimental not only to the individual, to law enforcement officers, but all the people around. So we'll look back again. I gave you one example. We go back to more recently. A Peruvian court has found this individual, Irving Gustavo Escate Haranca, guilty of aggravated robbery and sentenced him to 11 years. Border Patrol arrested him coming into the country illegally in December of 2023. He was released on his own recognizance. And then the Hartford Police Department arrested him in March of 2024 for felony assault. Felony crime of violence. They lodged an immigration detainer against him, the federal government did, and yet the Connecticut Department of Corrections ignored the immigration detainer, released him from custody without notifying ICE or ERO. He was again summoned by New Britain for motor vehicle offenses before ERO's Boston office finally arrested him in Hartford. Again, that was under President Biden. Okay, so this notion of the change in administration causing widespread concern that we now have to take steps to make sure that we keep violent criminal offenders in Connecticut is not anything that I support. And in fact, I think, I have my own opinions of what should happen to child sex offenders, which isn't appropriate for this podium. It would make deportation look like a tropical holiday. But our proposal is reasonable. And it basically says, and Rep. Fishbein will lay it out for you, but our position is quite clear. Individuals who are in this country illegally, committing felony crimes of violence, our local and state law enforcement ought to be cooperating with ICE, who want to detain and export those people for the safety not only of the residents of Connecticut who are here legally, but let's not lose track of the fact that the immigrants that are here illegally, committing no other crimes, trying to make a better life for themselves and their family, are often the victims of these very people. So if you care about immigrants who are here trying to make a better life, why on earth would you be a party to trying to keep violent offenders right in their community to continue to commit violent felonies, especially against children? You look at law enforcement as a whole, and that includes DOC, probation, parole, the court system. I've been a policeman for 23 years. When a police officer from another state, from another municipality, from the federal government calls me because they're working on an investigation that they're doing, I need to have unfettered ability to communicate with them. That's how we solve crime. Believe it or not, criminals actually don't stay in one town all the time. They move around. Why on earth would we have a law in Connecticut that says our law enforcement personnel are gag ordered? You can't communicate with our law enforcement personnel if we don't agree with the policies of the colored administration. It's terrible. It's a horrific idea. And there's not a police officer or a police agency in this state that has the time nor the inclination to go running around checking out people's immigration status to round them up for ICE. That is not happening. Democrats like to say that because they want to scare everybody and get the distraction away from them putting the guy like they did 3 weeks ago, the same guy that this legislature approved to be on the Board of Pardons and Parole after he let 43 murderers out of jail, and now he's doing this. They want to distract away from that. That is not what police officers in this state want to do. That is not what the legislators here want. We want our law enforcement officers to take and do their job, which is enforce the state laws that we agree on here in this building, and then help be a partner to our federal agency. Hey, we've arrested this individual for violent felonies. Let us help you triage with your scarce resources the people you should be targeting. Not the ones that are just here working, trying to make a better life, the ones that are raping kids. I take offense to that. We are not here. If a woman calls the police and says, my husband's beating me up, and the police show up and she says, I'm here illegally, we don't want the police to take any action with ICE. Or at least I don't. Our proposal doesn't. Because we want those people, victims, witnesses, to feel comfortable with the police department. But if people who come to Connecticut or the United States, but here Connecticut, and they're here illegally, and they're afraid to commit crimes because they might be deported, good. Be afraid to commit crimes. Stop it. Or do it and get out.